I remember when I was first ordained, I was 27 years old and imagining what my life as a priest would be, my ministry. In my years in the seminary, as is very common with the young men in the seminary, we spent a lot of time with youth groups, wanting to try to be an inspiration to young people who weren't that distantly removed from us in age. And then I remember thinking, but as a new priest, I'm also going to be doing a lot of marriage preparation. And I remember thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. I have the memory of being a teenager and working in youth ministry, but I don't know what I'm going to say when it comes to marriage. But I quickly realized that there was nothing I spent more time on than talking about marriage. I would have young couples that were coming to prepare for marriage. I was having couples who were struggling in various ways in their marriage coming for counseling. I was celebrating anniversaries. And so much of my life revolved around what marriage is. And it turned out that that became the great love of my priesthood. And I can easily say there's nothing that I spent more time on in total than working with marriage, in particular with marriage preparation. And what happened was that I realized that I had a very privileged perspective when it came to marriage. Because for most people, they experience their own marriage, and then they witness things about other people's lives. And we all know very well that our judgment about what we see in another person's life is only really scratching the surface. But I had the privileged position because as a priest, I was having people tell me the deeper part of their relationship, sharing with me the joys that they experienced, talking through the struggles that they faced. And then, as a priest who was hearing confessions, every married person always is including something about marriage in their confessions. And so what I saw was this desire to grow, this desire to live more and more fully the promises of marriage. And so I began to understand just how crucial marriage is as a building block for a family, and therefore as a building block for our entire society. So there's very little that I think matters more than the work that goes into a good marriage, because there's very little that has greater effect in the long run on the good of an entire society than strong marriages. And we can look at the damage done by broken marriages to see that the reverse is true. So as we gather today to celebrate anniversaries, then we are joyful for the example that you have given, for the ways that you have worked to be those building blocks for your families and for our society. The idea of looking at marriage as a building block fits very well with the readings that we have chosen for today's anniversary celebration. This famous image of Jesus talking about building on rock or sand, well, that's a way to look at the building of your marriage that became the building block of your family. Now, obviously, the image that Jesus uses about storms and winds and floods, those are things that people can identify with if you have spent any time in marriage and family life. You know very well those stories. And we could share endlessly from the crowd gathered here about those struggles and about the triumphs that come. And I'm quite certain that if you're here to celebrate your anniversary in the context of our faith, then you have tried very hard to let your foundation be the rock that Jesus describes. And your presence here celebrating these anniversaries is a testament to the fact that building on rock allows for us to grow and persevere despite the storms. So the idea then that we are building on rock It means that we have to be clear on what that foundation really is. In this gospel passage, Jesus was pointing to himself and saying, I am that rock. And so when we look at the rock foundation that a good marriage depends on, we have the person of Jesus. And we could say that what best defines who Jesus is love. Jesus demonstrates love in a way that no one else can, in the way that is perfect. The image of the God who is love taking on flesh and showing us what it means to be human, to love in a more perfect way. And so it is that love that has to be the foundation for your marriage and for your continued years together. Now, we use love in the English language in so many different ways that it's easy to slip into a kind of superficial notion about what love really is. So as you celebrate this anniversary, and as you look ahead to continuing to build the life that you have together, I want to suggest one aspect of love to help you continue growing, to continue being a witness to God's love in the world. The one aspect that I want to hold up is the idea of selfishness. That the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is selfishness. Because genuine love is to put the good of another person above my own. And if I put my own good above another person, that's a failure in love, a failure to follow the model of Jesus. What we see in the love of God is always putting the good of the other ahead of his own, all the way to the point that he gave his life on the cross. The extraordinary love of Jesus overcomes all selfishness, because even when we fail, even when what Jesus gets in return from us is sin, he responds by giving more. He gives, we fail, he gives more. Because his only concern is our good. That's the foundation that he is talking about. That's the foundation that has helped you not only arrive at the day of this anniversary, but will help you continue building on rock, to continue to be in the years that come the kind of witness that shows what love can do. Now, to practice that kind of love and to continue growing even after many years of marriage, I think that one key aspect of that kind of love is simply to be aware of it, to be conscious of it. One of the great dangers of a marriage is to take things for granted, to say, well, we've been at this for so long, we know what we're doing. And no doubt there have been many lessons learned from being faithful for many years. But the love of marriage, the commitment of marriage, is not something where you ever just arrive and say, well, I've done it now, I'm good. But rather, it has to be practiced anew every day. It has to be committed again every day. And in order for it to be the kind of love that builds even after many years, it is the conscious overcoming of selfishness, the conscious kind of love that is putting the need of the other above your own. In the first reading we had for this celebration, we have Paul's letter to the Romans, and he gives a kind of checklist for what love really can be. And in one line that we heard, it said, anticipate one another in showing honor. Anticipate one another in showing honor. And so my challenge to you, so that you continue to be a greater and greater witness to all of us, is to ask yourself anew each day, how am I going to anticipate my spouse today? How am I going to demonstrate my love because I am so conscious of your need that I anticipate an opportunity to show you honor? That I overcome my own tendency to be selfish. That I overcome again today my own tendency to take anything for granted, but rather to practice the kind of active love, that anticipation of your need that more perfectly reflects the love of Jesus himself. Here we are celebrating all that God has done in your marriage, and we do it here gathered around the altar. Because today, again, at this Mass, Jesus anticipates our need. Today, again, at this Mass, Jesus makes the greatest act of self-giving by providing nothing less than his body and blood for our food. Again today, here at this Mass, Jesus provides what we need to respond to his love. And so after all these years, Jesus continues to anticipate your need. And so draw your strength from him, so that as you look at your spouse and anticipate each other's need, your continued building on rock will continue to be the example of love that our world so needs.